What's happening, Hardscapers? Today we're going to talk about how you can build your own patio. Let's get into this. If you don't know me, my name is Mike. I am the owner and operator of Ever After Landscaping in Ontario. I bring you these hardscape videos each and every week on the I Am a Hardscaper channel and host of the How to Hardscape podcast for hardscape business owners. But ultimately, my goal is to get hardscape information out there into people's eyes and ears so that they can put it to their own use. And today we're going to talk about how you can build a patio yourself. Now, I've owned and operated a hardscape business for more than a handful of years now, and a bit of that time was just by myself. So I've had to learn some things along the way that makes my job sites more efficient and is less taxing on me as a owner-operator. Anytime you hear this sound, along with some text at the bottom of the screen, that just means we have a full-length video on that specific topic, and those will all be linked in the description below to go much deeper into that topic. Starting with, first and foremost, the choices of pavers for your backyard patio. There are tons to choose from. Shapes, sizes, colors, textures. We have an entire video dedicated to this because there's so many options to get started with. But for the most simplistic part of choosing pavers, it comes down to choosing a paver for the field or the main part of your paver patio and a paver that contrasts or complements it for the border. And that's fairly straightforward, but then we get into that video where we talk about shapes, colors, sizes, textures, and really dig into what paver is going to be best for you. After that, we need to plan out a design for our paver patio. Now in this project, we're going to just cover a paver patio on the existing grade. So we're not dealing with a raised patio or steps or a retaining wall to retain an area of that paver patio to be able to build that project. We're just going to be talking about building a paver patio. So this planning process is a little bit more straightforward because we don't have to do a specific design for these steps, retaining walls, raised patios. Just the pavers are going to match that existing grade. So we need to dig down to be able to excavate for our base material and our pavers. For me, in Ontario, we deal with a lot of freeze-thaw cycles during the winter, so our bases for pedestrian use are 6 to 8 inches thick. For this scenario, I'll choose 8 inches plus 1 inch of bedding layer and plus our 2 3/8 inch of paver height typically. So we need to excavate 11.5 inches down from the top of our pavers. So what I like to do is use string lines, set that top of paver height based on whatever the step out is from any door in the backyard that we have that we want to match it to, and then start digging down from that string line that 11.5 inches. Now alternatively, and even better for your excavation, is you use a synthetic base, and this is a high density polypropylene sheet that is 3/4 inches thick and replaces our base material entirely because it transfers the load over a wider area. It insulates the ground. I've used it for many years now. My oldest project is going on 5 years with it. Still looks amazing. And for this, all you need is your bedding layer, the height of the paver panels, and then the height of the pavers. That works out to be about 4 inches. So it saves you more than double the excavation. And when doing that excavation for yourself, I do highly recommend you rent a piece of equipment if you do not already have one. A walk-behind mini skid steer is easily accessible from most rental stores, typically around $300 a day. Get it for the day, do your excavation, and then you're not having to hand dig anything. Additionally, get bins for your disposal. If you're doing this by yourself, having to load a trailer, drive to the dump, come back, do the same thing again, it takes a lot of time. Rent a bin, it's going to cost you more in materials, but it's going to save you tons of time and headache of having to drive back and forth. If you want to know how much excavated material is going to come out, it's going to be the square feet of the project multiplied by the depth in inches multiplied by 0.003, and then add about a 15% fluff factor to that as well. And that's going to be the total cubic yards that are going to come out of that, and then plan that for your bins coming in and out. Now by this time, we're already down to our subsoil, which should be a clay or sandy mixture subsoil. You should have no organics, and that includes if you're using paver base panels. If you've gone down 4 inches and you still have black earth, that is organic material, and you want to get that out of there. So this is where paver base panels may not even be applicable to your project. Once we're at our subsoil, I do like to compact a layer of 3/4 inch clear stone along with a type S mortar mix for clay or Portland cement for a sandy subsoil. This helps draw out the moisture from that and gives us a good subsoil subsoil to start to build on top of. Our excavation should mimic the slope of our pavement as well. And to apply that slope, we go a minimum of 1/8 of an inch per foot slope to 1/4 of an inch per foot slope on our patios, away from our foundation. And to measure that, all we do is set up our string line level, going away from the foundation, measure the distance from the foundation to that final string line that represents the end of your patio, and then multiply that by our slope fraction. For example, if we have 16 feet in length, and we're gonna go with 1/4 inch per foot slope, that's 4 inches that I need to lower that final string line down to account for that slope. For your excavation, you'll also wanna excavate past the final paver by the depth of your base. So if you're doing an 8-inch depth base, your excavation should exceed the final paver by 8 inches. This gives your pavers a platform to sit on and not eventually slide off as settling occurs outside of your base. Once our subsoil is prepped, we then lay a layer of geotextile. To summarize this really quick, non-woven promotes drainage and separation, while woven promotes reinforcement and separation. So if you're preparing your base on a weak clay subsoil, maybe opt for that woven geotextile to add some reinforcement. If you have a sandier subsoil, maybe go with the non-woven to promote drainage. Personally, for me, I like to use non-woven geotextile with a biaxial geogrid, either on top of that non-woven geotextile or sandwiched in between my base, because that will add stabilization to my base. There's 2 different aggregates that you can use for your base, and one you should never use even for your bedding layer. That one is stone dust. Stone dust is a 1/4 inch chipstone down to fines. It does not drain properly. It keeps water soaked in it. That causes failure to your jointing compound, efflorescence to show up on your pavers, and it voids manufacturer warranty, so never use this. Granular A, or 3/4 inch down to fines sand, is a traditional base or dense graded base, and it can be used. Just make sure to add some moisture to it when you are compacting. And if you want an open graded base to let water permeate freely through that base, use a 3/4 inch clear stone. Clear or clean just means there are no fines in it. And when you're compacting, make sure you use a proper compactor for the job. The rule of thumb is for every 1 inch of lift or height of base that you are compacting, make sure that your compactor can do at least 1,000 pounds of centrifugal force. The smallest compactor that you can rent from a rental shop is likely not going to do the trick. You want to get a little bit larger. If you need, get one delivered to you from a rental shop. But the compaction is going to be crucial to make sure that your project is not going to settle. For our base, we want to make sure it is fairly uniform when we're compacting it. We don't want to have it be wavy and have valleys and mountains. We want to make sure our compactor's smoothly going across it. Get your aggregates delivered, dumped. Once again, we're using our string lines to measure down to make sure that we are at the right height for our base. We're measuring down from that toppest string line that represents top of paver, about 3.5 inches. That leaves room for 1 inch of bedding layer and 2 3/8 of an inch for the height of your paver, or whatever your paver height is, just factor that into it. Now we're ready to start screeding. So if we opted for a synthetic base using those paver base panels, this is where you would start on top of a non-woven geotextile. We don't need woven for our paver base panels because we get that reinforcement from the panels themselves. We want to promote drainage. We use 3/4 inch interior diameter gas pipes. You can find this at any home renovation store, and we set these on top of our base material. We want to make sure that we get this perfect to be able to set our pavers on top. Set those screed bars the height of your pavers below your string line. Once again, your string line should follow the slope of your final product. So your screed bars should be the height of your paver below that string line throughout the entire bar. Along the foundation, it can be level from one bar to the next, but moving away from the foundation, you want that slope applied. So I set one screed bar on one side of the patio, following my string line slope, and then I set the next screed bar level with that initially set screed bar from side to side. And in that sense, that screed bar is also following our slope away from the foundation. I put in my bedding material to start screeding, and for the most part for this, I'm going to use HPB, even if it is on top of A-gravel. This is a 1/4 inch clean chip stone. Now you can use concrete sand for your traditional dense graded base on top of A-gravel, and I will for vehicular applications where the paver joints are very thin. That's because you want that concrete sand to work its way up into the joints when you do a final compaction of your pavers. Place that screed material within your screed bars, spread it around, and start scraping it back, making sure you're filling in any void spots as you continue to do that. And then just hop your screed bars over one by one until you have your entire patio screeded. When you remove the screed bars and you're ready to start laying, just make sure you fill in those void spaces that the screed bars were in with some of that material. Now you're ready to just start laying your pavers. Once again, get everything delivered, much like your bins, any rental equipment that you need. Don't try picking up all of your pavers to save about $150 for delivery. That delivery is well worth it. Start with the border stones and then lay your patio from a corner of your project, working your way out and applying whatever pattern you choose. If you do decide to lay randomly, make sure your lines are no more than 3 feet in length, so split those up, and make sure there's no intersections or 4 corners meeting one another. Ideally, you plan your patio for no cuts. Now, this is impossible for curved patios, but for square, rectangular patios, lay to a full stone. It's much easier and you don't have to cut anything. Instead of dropping pavers into the bedding layer and then moving them towards where you need to lay them, click the paver against the pavers you're laying them to and then set it into your bedding material. Otherwise, you'll pinch that bedding material and you won't get a tight lay. Set string lines every now and then to make sure that you're laying straight, because you will lose those lines if you just lay from a corner and along your foundation. Speaking of which, if you're laying along a foundation, foundations aren't always completely straight. So you will want to put a line across your foundation to make sure that you are laying straight. And it may be just a 1/4 inch off of your foundation. That's totally fine, because if your foundation is not completely straight, in some areas you might be touching that foundation with your pavers. Once you've finished laying your patio, you're now ready for edge restraint. But for this edge restraint, you're installing a plastic edge restraint or a concrete edge restraint. You want to scrape away that bedding material from the edge of your pavers, because you want your edge restraint to lay on your base material, not your screed material. This may cause some of that base material underneath those border pavers to fall out. That's fine. If you're installing a plastic edge restraint, just make sure to try to get some of that bedding material back in there when you install it. If you're installing a concrete edge restraint, which is typically what I'm installing, make sure some of that concrete edge restraint goes underneath those pavers when you are troweling it in. You're coming up only about 1 inch to your paver and then tapering away. For plastic edge restraint, your spikes go every 6 inches, and you don't want to hammer that nail all the way down to the plastic edge restraint. Leave about a 1/4 of an inch gap between the plastic edge restraint and the bottom of that nail. Once that's done, you can then start installing your jointing compound. I'm typically using a polymeric sand or a semi-permeable jointing compound. Semi-permeable goes in wet, so you just dump it out, start spraying it and brooming it around or squeegeeing it around into the joints. The water helps to consolidate it, but I do like to use a vibratory roller compactor to make sure it's getting down to the bottom, especially with smaller pavers, and especially on top of synthetic base. For polymeric sand, it goes in dry and you need at least 24 hours of no rain, and those joints can't have moisture in them. For that, sweep it around and then consolidate it down to the bottom of the joint using a compactor with a mat on to protect the pavers, or a vibratory roller compactor. You will notice no matter the width of those joints that sand will consolidate. It will go down. And this is important to do, because if you don't do that, eventually that sand will erode away down into the joint, and then you'll have pockets and your sand will fail. Continue this process again and again until you get to 1/8 of an inch below the top of that paver or bottom of the chamfer of the paver. For tighter joints, this is going to take multiple applications. Once that's done, follow the manufacturer's guidelines on how to activate that sand using a hose with a shower setting. Typically, bottom of the slope is where you work, and you work your way up to the top. Sometimes watering once thoroughly, or sometimes watering once to set it, and then going back and watering again. But every manufacturer is going to be different. And there you are. You have your entire patio done, and done properly as a professional. You can dress up the edges of your pavers with topsoil, seed, or sod to finalize everything. Once again, there's videos on every single step of the process in detail in the link in the description below. If you have any questions, refer to those videos, learn more, or leave a comment in the comment section. I'll respond to anybody and everybody. Like this video if you found it helpful for whatever reason, and subscribe to this channel for more hardscaping content like this. Thank you so much for watching.